It's 7 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon, so you know what time it is. It's time for your weekly episode of Look Around the Confederation. I'm your host for the evening, Moose. And before we get started, please remember the views and opinions expressed in this broadcast are not necessarily the views and opinions of the SCV, its GEC, nor Division Brigade camps or any of the subsidiaries. How is everybody doing in Dixieland tonight? We have an action packed show for you tonight. We have two absolute great guests. We have Army of Tennessee Commander Jimmy Hill, Army of Tennessee Councilman Carl Jones. I think he's been on here once or twice before, and they're going to be giving an update on the Army of Tennessee. Have a great episode for y'all planned. So we're going to go ahead and jump into some camp news, and then we're going to bring on the main leaders of tonight's show, Commander Hill and Councilman Jones. And funny enough, we've been promoting this one for a while, and I'm guessing we are going to get a better introduction than I've been giving it so far. And I'll let them talk about it later. But as the Yellowhammer Jammer, I'm not going to steal poor Jimmy's thunder like that. I wouldn't do that to him. So we're going to move down the news section and continue going on with it. The next one is going to be this fundraiser. Let's see if I can find it for the Hayes tombstone. So Landon Carter Hayes was a Tennessee politician and Confederate senator. During the war between the states, he was born and raised in Carter County and inherited the Hipton Hayes estate when he got married. During the war, he moved to Richmond, Virginia as a Confederate senator, and during and after the war stayed there. He lost his property, though, and moved to Memphis, Tennessee, where he lived the rest of his life. He was buried in Memphis and then later moved to Jackson, Tennessee, where he no longer has a headstone. It is our goal to raise funds and have a headstone erected for him. This is a project by the Lieutenant Robert J. Tipton Camp, 2083. And let me go ahead and find their, where is it? They have a donation tab you can follow. Let's see here. I blame Connor. He has messed up my whole system here. And so we're just going to continuously blame Connor for everything because he's not here to defend himself. Here it is. All right, let me get it ready for y'all. And boom. So the link for the fundraiser is in the chat now. Please go support that if you can. We do have the legend, past Commander-in-Chief Paul Grambling Jones in the chat, Victor Smith in the chat, whoever that is. Commander Nelson, I spoke at Commander Nelson's camp, the Sam Davis camp, 569 yesterday. Or no, Tuesday. I meant to put that in the news, but we'll have to save that for next week. That's what happens when you just stay too busy. We also have the Dick Nabbit. We have the Lone Ranger Chuck McMichael in the chat, past Commander-in-Chief as well. And a new member of the chat crew, Mr. Sean McFall. All right, we're just going to go down here and get through everything as quickly as possible. The Samuel H. Poe Camp, number 255, have the special edition 30th anniversary challenge coin made, of course, to celebrate the 30th anniversary of our camp. I am the adjutant for the Samuel H. Poe Camp, number 255. And these are $10 each. You can either contact me or our historian-in-chief, Forrest S. Dawes, our camp commander, to get one of these lovely challenge coins. Please do, and please support us. And thank you for allowing us to defend the Confederate soldiers' good name for 30 years. Let's see here. All right, this next one, always a lovely event. I am looking forward to actually being able to attend it this year, and that is the Stephen D. Lee Institute. February 16th through the 17th will be in Columbia, Tennessee this year. The theme this year is Who Are We as a People and an Organization? We have already a great lineup of speakers that you can see on the screen. Please register and registration. I'll get it out eventually. It had to happen at least once this episode. At least it doesn't happen when we have the Army of Tennessee Commander and Councilman on. Registration and hotel information will be posted by the end of the summer. Start making your plans now. And, of course, the website for the SD Lee Institute is scrolling at the bottom of the screen. I will post that in the chat as well. All right. I did mean to get a bit more news, but I didn't have time to load it up. So we're going to continue on with our guests tonight. And our guests tonight are, well, they're going to be a lot better at this than I am. We have, of course, the Army of Tennessee Commander on and the Army of Tennessee Councilman. And so now let's give them a warm SCV chat welcome to Army of Tennessee Commander Jimmy Hill and Army of Tennessee Councilman Carl Jones.
Wait a minute, Moose. It's Stephen Dill Lee.
Hey, I was going to let that pass. I was not.
As soon as it came out of my mouth, I was like, we're just going to keep going with it.
I know that Conroe would not allow it to pass, so I'm not going to either. I'm acting in Conroe's stead here. Stephen would be spelled with an A-N on the end, Stephen with an E-N. So there you go, Mr. Educator to be.
Well, after he didn't come down hard on the Yellowhammer event and left that for us to talk about, I could not in good conscience say, hey, that's Stephen. I had to let that slide.
I love how the chat heads now are like, wow, you're going to be a history teacher? Yes, I am. Please pray for those students.
And my second comment as we're opening is, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and Chuck McMichael.
Even the past Commander-in-Chief Paul Gramlin was going to let it slide too. No one said anything in the chat is the reason it got me. And I was like, it popped in my head. I was like, I know I said that wrong. And I'm just going to keep acting like I didn't. And I was like, no one's called me out on it, so maybe I can get away with it. Well, First thing Carl says.
Moose, the one thing, you might have got nailed on that, but you made it pretty well through all the rest of them. But as many episodes of chat as I've watched, there's been other times that, somebody could have called you out, like Waco, Texas.
Okay.
As far as I know, it's still Waco. and it took a little while before somebody actually spelled it W-A-K-E than an O.
Oh, yeah. Someone had to sound it out for me in the chat. I think it was poor David from the Tennessee division. It is
Moose is too young to remember the Hooked on Phonics commercials.
Actually, I do remember them. I was told my whole high school career that I probably need to get hooked on phonics because obviously I have a I can't pronunciate anything. And during the 3 seasons now, 3 years of Look Around where I've been doing camp, division, national, Army news, it has not changed. Someone asked about the moose hunt. Send us a message. If you put a donation down for $20, you get to shoot me with a Nerf gun. All the donations go to the National Confederate Museum. We're not going to spend any time on that. We're just going to move on.
All right. Well, when Carl and I were talking about some of the stuff that we're going to talk about tonight, we want to start with the reunion that just finished, the one in Hot Springs. Because one of the things Carl and I discussed was that a national reunion is not what everybody thinks it is. In somewhere in their mind, they think that they get there and all week long, all they do is attend business meetings that last from early in the morning to late in the afternoon or at night. And that's the farthest thing from the truth. Would you not agree, Mr. Jones?
Oh, absolutely. It's, they generally were out of there by around lunchtime, and the rest of the time is spent with fellowship. And honestly, that's what made me want to come back, because I have not always been, a national officer. There was a time when I was, just a division chief of staff or a member that just went out of curiosity or what have you. And I was kind of surprised at the opportunities to meet other people from other divisions, other armies, and to make friendships, you know, and a case in point, you know, I met Vern Paget, one of our I think he's a member of the Georgia division, at the very first reunion I ever went to in 2007. And he and I are, you know, we're friends to this day as a result of it. I met Paul Gramling. I don't know if y'all know who he is or not, but some of you have heard the name. But I met him actually, I met him before the reunion at the AoT, at the sesquicentennial reenactment of the Davis inauguration in Montgomery, and then again that same year at the reunion in Montgomery. And you know, again, we've been friends ever since. So it's a lot. I mean, it's not all business. There's business that's handled there. There are business sessions that we go through, and there's a lot usually that's accomplished there, especially in election years. But the high point of the reunion to me, they call it a reunion. The old veterans themselves called it a reunion instead of a convention for a reason, and it was because it becomes, the more of them you go to, like literally a giant family reunion.
Moose, if you would bring up photos 1 and 2, or if you have to bring, now that's what our normal, that was opening day. And there's our commander-in-chief. Now bring up the next set. We'll talk about things that happen. This turns into a family event. I mean, it's not just our delegates there. It is entire families coming to a reunion. And if you look in that picture, you'll find a lot of ladies sitting with their husbands, a lot of OCR ladies that were there by themselves. All right, if you would, to the next one. Now, not all business is handled inside the hall. There is a whole lot of business that takes place in places like this, that's on the screen, or to the next one. Those guys have been up too long. I think Carl knows these guys real well. Great guys, but by this point in time, one of them's got his eyes about half open. I can see that.
You weren't supposed to out me like that. I know them well, but I don't admit to it.
Well, you know, I cropped the picture so you wouldn't be in it. All right, go ahead to the next one. Again, more business sessions. This is where a lot of business takes place. Keep on going. Some of them are smart. They dip their head down when they see the camera going off. Go ahead. All right. It's getting later in the evening now, and the crowd is getting bigger. All right. Not only is there's things other than a business session going on inside the hall or out in the lobby. There's other things to do while you're there. And I'll give this one over to our Councilman Jones for the oratory contest, since he was in it. So bring up a couple of pictures for us. I think anybody want to recognize these two guys?
That's James Turner. That's James Turner and Hank.
Yeah. Who's the guy hiding underneath the hat? I figured you would know. I wasn't there. I actually took a night off from the oratory.
That would be the one and only, the notorious Chuck McMichael.
All right. Yeah, I couldn't see the face, so it was hard to figure it out.
He makes a really good Obi-Wan Kenobi without the wisdom.
And it sort of looks like James Turner beamed himself down, because that definitely looks like a Star Trek shirt. All right. Also at the reunion, we have awards that are given out, and the AoT did real well. I think our first picture is the First Lieutenant Thomas H. Gaynor Camp from Panama City, Florida. They received the award for the greatest gain in camp members. Very proud of that camp. This is the camp that did the billboards that everyone talked about the other night. And if that's what it takes to get members, then, if it works in your area, go with it. The second award received by a member of the AoT was the General Robert H. Hatton Camp in Lebanon, Tennessee. Tom Wood is the commander of the camp, and they are the AoT Superior Camp of the Year. That camp is extremely active. I went back probably 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago. The 7th Tennessee Infantry flag was returned to Wilson County for the first time in over 150 years. It had been restored by the Tennessee Archives, and they brought it to Lebanon and let it stay on display there for 30 days. They had a very good ceremony, and about 60 people attended the event. Our next award was for the Army of Tennessee. We received the Albert Sidney Johnson Award for the highest gain in new camps. We had 6 new camps added to the Army of Tennessee this past year, something we all need to be very proud of. And then the last one, we had an OCR society. This is the Aunt Polly's Highland Rose number 10 in Tennessee that won Best Scrapbook. So it's not only just SCV people there are winning awards, it's also the OCR, and very proud. You can tell by the smile on her face, she was very proud of what they won. All right, then, Carl, you can jump in here anytime. There was eating. We got some pictures of some people eating. This is the Alabama Division supper. This was held at JB's Chop House. And we had a good crowd. Had a commander-in-chief back in the back. Past Commander Larry McClooney was there. And we had camps from all over the state that were there. Next is the Florida Division supper. This was at the Brick House Grill. They had a good crowd. I think they had 15 signed up. I ate there Thursday night. This supper was on Friday night. And the guy actually remembered me from 2009 when we ate there at the very first Alabama Division supper that we ever held. And he came up and he said, "I know you from somewhere." And I told him, "Well, I've only been here one time," and told him when. And he said, I knew you. And he said, "I got more groups from the SCV coming." He said, "You guys are good for business." South Carolina was going to be there the next night. So that turned out to be a very popular place. Then the Tennessee Division supper. They went to Al Capone's old hangout called the Ohio Club. I was there the next night. That's where I was at when the oratory was going on. My wife and I wanted to go out and get something different instead of eating at the restaurant there all the time. And we got there just at the time that the band was starting to play. And you can see the drum kit and everything directly behind Rich Garcia's head. And we had just left the Arlington when the band started playing. And Sheila said, "Man, this is so loud. Let's go get something else." Well, we were sitting over where that, you can see him in the right-hand corner. There's a waiter standing there behind the screen. That's where they put us. We're right beside the drum kit and the band. And she just looked at me and said, "This can't be any better than what it was at the Arlington." It was 100 times quieter than what was going on at the Arlington. It was like we were behind the speakers, and it was like what I would be listening to AC/DC at home on a stereo. Even though it was loud, it was just the right level for me. And then there was dancing. That'll be the next one. There we go. Now, it's not always something that you want to get out on the floor. I could not do that kind of dancing. There's no way I would get out there. I would be probably both left feet would be in good showing that night. Then we went back to business. That's the AoT meeting on Saturday morning. We had a good turnout. We had 7 out of the 9 divisions were represented. The guy on the second row with the white hat is the Indiana Division Commander Dale Felder. One that was missing, he had to go home early that day. We have one of the Michigan camp commanders there, James Perkins, and he had to get on the road and see if he can make it home in a decent hour. Carl, why don't you, when we was talking about at the Army meeting, why don't you give a brief update on our plan for the Army for fundraising? You made that presentation.
Yeah, let me preface that with the importance of the museum, because there's still a lot of trying to find a way of saying it, but there's a lot of questioning about why do we want to fund this museum. Never in the history of the SCV, never since the end of the war in 1865, has the South had a place that on any kind of grand scale, especially that told our side of the story. We talk all the time about taking back the narrative, but prior to the museum, and specifically the timeline in the museum, taking back the narrative has generally consisted of, well, let's hope somebody writes a book in our favor. Let's set up a recruiting booth and hand out some pamphlets. And we're not getting anywhere like that. The museum has got a timeline. That was as it was envisioned. It was never envisioned to be when it was voted on in 2009 in Hot Springs. It was never envisioned to be what most museums are when you think of a Civil War, quote unquote, museum. It was never envisioned to be a relic show where you show up, you see, a case full of mini balls, some belt buckles, a sword or two, muskets. Maybe if you're really fortunate, there'll be a cannon there. We never wanted to create that. And Chuck Mack had the vision of telling a story, of there being a timeline. And the timeline is the centerpiece of the museum. And we talked further on, as we were ongoing in the process of constructing and eventually opening this museum, about what the timeline should cover. And it came out to where we've got a timeline now that covers the, most of the entire history, 400-year history of the Southern people, of our culture, why we're different from Northern culture, or specifically Yankee culture, Puritan culture, as the case may be, as you want to call it. The timeline is up now. If you've not been, I told somebody the other night, I was at a camp meeting Monday night, and I asked, have any of you been to the museum? And only one had. Okay, how long has it been since you've been there? He said a year. I said, you need to go back, because the museum has taken immense strides just in the past year, past 6 months, and the past 3 months. I've talked to several people, including the commander-in-chief and various others that work there, that tell me people coming through, and these are not SCV members. These are, people who are passing by and for whatever reason decide to stop in, and they're spending anywhere from 2.5 to 3 up to 5.5 hours in the museum reading our narrative. And there is no other place on this planet in the entire universe that tells the complete history of the Southern people and what the true cause of our separation from the North and why we fought to defend that. There's no other place that does that. This is ground zero for taking back the narrative. Okay, so there's my pitch on why the museum is important. We owe some money on the banknote, and we need to pay that off between now and June the 15th of 2025. And so my plan for the Army is for each camp in our Army to raise $25 per member. We're not asking a lot. If you got 10 members, that's $250. You know, I mean, do the math. Okay. So 20 and understand, I use the term raise the money. I didn't say pass the hat. I didn't say raid your treasury. I don't want you to do that because I want this to benefit your camp also. And Jimmy and I both, over the years that we've worked together, going back, 100 years or so, based on the gray in our beards, we've realized, we've seen it over and over again, that when your local camp gets out in the public and the public sees who we are, they're not scared of us anymore. And it leads to recruitment, and it leads to excitement about the camp. And you're going to see your camp grow as a result of that. So I don't want you to pass the hat. I don't want you to, to write a check out of your existing treasury. I want you to get out in the public and raise the money through whatever means of fundraising you come up with. Turkey shoots, barbecue cook-offs, chicken suppers, cake walks, garage sales, whatever you come up with that gets you in the public eye and gives you the opportunity to interact with the general public in your local area. And that's going to do several things for us. Not only is it going to help us raise the money to go towards the principal on this banknote and get our museum paid off, but it's going to boost the presence of your camp in your local area. And I promise you, I've seen this work. Jimmy has seen this work. We've seen this work dozens and dozens and dozens of times. Your camp can grow and benefit from this. So this is multifaceted. The reason that I'm pitching, or Jimmy and I both are pitching this approach to it. And there's going to be more coming out. We've got some other things in the works that will benefit your camp. But right now, the primary focus of the SCV, in my opinion, is to pay off this last remaining debt on the museum, and to get that taken care of, so that it's ours. But what I'm telling you is we can build our camps and build our presence in the local community in the process.
Now, part of what Carl was talking about is we did a program together where we're trying to make our organization be in the limelight of other civic organizations like the Rotary Club, the Civitans, Kiwanis. Those guys have got an image in your local town, and they all fundraise in one way or the other. Lions Club sold light bulbs and mops forever. Kiwanis do pancakes all the time and raise money for the projects that they're doing. So it's the same takeoff. We want to be out there in the public eye. We want them to see who, like my camp, the Thomas H. Hobbs camp at Athens, we've done this for years. We do one now called the Swamp John. And we raised in 4 hours $900. All we have to do is serve meals. There's somebody else cooking it. All we have to do is put it on the plate and give it to these people. So for 4 hours work, that's pretty good return. All right.
Well, for the record, Moose, that was my son slamming the door, not me. Okay.
Okay. I'll try to remember that for next time.
Right. Yeah. we make that we make an assumption there. All right, let's go back to some photos for a second. At the reunion, we had a lot of our divisions got together. Mississippi was one of them that posed for the picture. Here's all the Mississippi guys that showed up for the picture. Second up was the Florida division. Looked like they had a very good crowd there. And then the Tennessee division. They had to go wide angle on these guys. There was a crowd from Tennessee. And unfortunately, the Alabama division did not take a picture inside the reunion hall, but I did find one from Alabama. There it is. And if you look at the very guy on the right-hand side of that screen, it looks like J.C. Hanna snuck in on the Alabama division's photo. Some people see it, other people don't. But we welcome JC anytime he wants to come into Alabama and visit with us. All right, we'll go on a little farther. There's some other things that happened at the reunions. Tennessee Division Commander Joey Nolan, he made an $11,000 donation to the museum. Alabama Division Commander Mike McMurray made a $25,000 donation to the reunion, but nobody took a picture. So you'll have to take my word for it. He made the donation. A popular place in the hotel. Next picture. The Al Capone Suite. This is where Commander Boshears was spending the night at.
That's Al Capone's actual blue cooler over there on the right.
Yeah. He looks like he left a lot of liquor behind too. But it was reported that there were people coming to the door quite a bit. I was there one night, but it was for a meeting that I was invited to. The next picture shows a couple of Al Capone's bagmen still hanging around. This is Brigade Command Northeast Central Brigade Commander Jimmy Martin and the Lieutenant Brigade Commander for the Northeast Brigade of Alabama, Brian Cooper. They definitely dressed the part on Saturday morning, looking like a couple of Al Capone's men. The unofficial Best Dressed Award goes to the Kirby Smith camp. These guys always show up every day of the reunion with a different outfit on that matches. They come to represent the Kirby Smith camp. The next picture that we have from the reunion is our own Connor Bond receiving the Robert E. Lee Award. The smile on his face, I don't think exactly tells how happy he actually is. I've seen him, I don't know if he put the award down for several hours. I saw him walking around with it underneath his arm. But it went to a very deserving person. But the happiest guy at the reunion had to be this guy named HK. From the opening part of the reunion, when they were calling out the flags, you heard this big whooping noise every time a North Carolina camp was announced that their flag was coming down. Every time I saw him in an HK Edgerton breakfast, and every picture has got that big smile across his face. All right. That's all of the pictures that I'm aware of. We got some upcoming events that have been sent in to me from the all across the Army. From Georgia, coming up on September the 22nd through the 24th, we have the Battle of Chickamauga reenactment. That is one of the largest reenactments that you will go to in the Southeast. That and Shiloh reenactments are two of the biggest and best that you could go to. So mark your calendar for that one. September the 23rd, also in Georgia, the Private David W. Payne Camp 1633 anniversary rechartering will take place. And Commander-in-Chief Boshears is their guest speaker for that night. September the 30th. Now we got a picture for this one. The Yellowhammer Jammer. We got that one out of order. Let's see. Let him find it.
That did not even require Moose to speak, and he messed it up.
Well, we're going to talk about it a little bit because it's going to be a big crowd for us, we hope. The Alabama Division is putting this on. We used to have an event in the fall. It was a fall muster. We changed the name of it because we had a lot of people said, well, I thought that was a mechanized cavalry event, and I'm not in it, so I didn't come. And it actually was just a gigantic gathering of people that had homemade ice cream and cooked hamburgers or hot dogs and sat around and fellowshiped with each other, and they would have some guest speakers. So we've got a little twist on this. We're going to call it the Yellowhammer Jammer. It's going to start at 9 in the morning and go to 3:30 in the afternoon. Actually, that's been changed now to 4. We have to keep lengthening this thing out. In Marbury, Alabama, and it's at the location of the old Confederate Soldiers' Home. We've got some musical performances by Mutt Cooper. And I'm going to ask Carl if you would talk a little bit about Mutt, because a lot of people may not have heard about him.
Yeah, Mutt is he's become a very close friend of mine. I mean, you know, I actually met Mutt through a mutual friend who is a famous songwriter from back, wrote hit songs from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Guy named Rock Killo. If any of you were Hank Jr. or Oak Ridge Boy fans, or Johnny Rodriguez, or Jeannie Seeley, or Sammy Kershaw fans, or any number of other people, you've heard Mutt. I mean, you've heard Rock Killo's music, okay? And Rock was a guest on SCV Chat with me one night when I guest hosted, and so was Mutt. And so Rock introduced Mutt and I a few years ago. And Mutt is a songwriter. He wrote a song. You can go out actually on YouTube and look up his song "Confederate Soldier" that he recorded. He had on CD. He sold I think 100 copies of the CD and donated all the money, or half the money, to the Georgia Division Heritage Defense Fund, and the other half to the SCV National Museum, National Confederate Museum. Mutt he's a great musician. He's a great guitar player. He's also a great harmonica player. He doesn't show that off very much. If you were to go to my YouTube channel or my Facebook page, you'd find a video of he and I playing together at one of the Alabama Division reunions, where I get him to break out the harmonica and he just wails away on it. It's awesome. And, but, you know, fantastic musician, one of my really close friends. And I know we got some other great acts there, but Mutt, him by himself, is worth showing up for.
All right. Well, I'm going to talk about some of the other ones. We have a young lady, Allie Knight. I first saw her, she performed, she was 15 years old at a Flag Day rally at the St. Clair County Camp in Asheville, Alabama. And she performed with her father. She writes her own music, and she also does cover songs of some. I heard her again 6 years later. She definitely, her voice has changed. Her looks has changed as she's got older. She does a cover of Patsy Cline's Walking After Midnight that sounds just like you're listening to Patsy Cline. So unfortunately, her hour show has now been cut to 30 minutes because she's expecting her first child about a month after this event takes place. And so her father told me that we're going to have to play tracks for the music, because she's not going to be able to hold the guitar out in front of her stomach because it's going to grow a bit.
I can relate.
Yeah, and she will not be able to pick her guitar in the way that she normally would. And I said that was fine. We also have Brendan Young. He is the son or stepson of our past division commander, Robert Reams. He has been, in the last couple of years, been out in Branson, Missouri, playing in the Showboat Trail and at Dolly Parton's music venues that are in Branson. He's moved back home now. He's got married and got in contact with him, and he's agreed to be there as well. He plays a little bit of everything. He also writes his own music. Our headline act is Unreconstructed, which everybody should be well known of their prowess in the music industry. So they will be there as well. We're going to alternate these. They're going to come on and play a couple of times during the day. One of the other, our guest that's going to be there is past Commander-in-Chief Chuck McMichael. He's going to be there to speak on whatever he wants to talk about. I told him I would like to hear. That's open up a can of worms.
Yeah, giving him an open mic. Come on.
Well, I told him what I was looking for really was sort of like the oratory, where, you know, if he wants to bring Hank, that's fine. Whatever he wants to talk about, but we want this to be humorous. He can get in some things about our Southern history because the crowd that's going to be there, it's open to the public, but primarily it's going to be SCV, UDC. The Children of the Confederacy is going to have a section there where they're going to be doing a lot of things for the kids. This thing is going to be for people of all ages. We have a cornhole contest that's going to be going on, horseshoe contest. There's going to be trophies for both of those. A hot dog eating contest for adults and for the kids. But knowing how some of our adult members can eat hot dogs, we decided that we're going to do this differently, where there's going to be one hot dog and who can eat it the fastest. We're not going to sit there and feed you 40 hot dogs or more. So that's the basics of the Yellowhammer Jammer. We hope that there will be donation stations set up. If they want to give to the National Confederate Museum, there will be a place and an opportunity for that to happen. But it is not a requirement. This is free to the public and it's free to our members. So people, come on out. We're also doing free genealogy. So if you don't have your ancestor from the public, we will have Harold Bowden there, and he will definitely be able to find you one. So I've seen Harold work his magic before. I sat there and watched him find 4 guys for the tour manager of Confederate Railroad, who swore he had one, but he said, I couldn't tell you where they're buried or anything. He left for about 15 minutes and came back. Harold had already found all 4, including a photo that was on the internet of the cemetery where all 4 brothers were buried side by side.
Yeah, he wound up, that was Tom Johnson, and he and I got to be real good friends. In fact, he passed away about a year ago, and I talked to him days before he passed away. He had come down with throat cancer, just all of a sudden, and I'm talking about he was diagnosed, and 2 weeks later he was gone. And I talked to him about 3 days before he passed away. The last words he said to me was, I have the SCV challenge coin you gave me on my nightstand right next to me. And then 3 days later, he was gone. But Harold, when he handed him, the pictures and all of his genealogical research, I mean, Tom was on cloud 9, man. I mean, it was like you couldn't have made him any happier if you'd handed him a pot of gold. And he wound up joining the SCV. He was a member of the camp in Chattanooga.
Yeah, he wasn't just handed a couple of pieces of paper.
Right.
Harold handed him a folder that had at least 12 to 14 sheets of paper in it. And Tom left and went up to the trailer where Confederate Railroad were all at. And we ended up having Danny Shirley showed up. He came through to our booth there. The Northeast Central Brigade had set up a booth. I recognized him, but he didn't look the same as he does on stage with the ball cap pulled down over his eyes. And people walked by, never recognized him. And he stood there and talked to us about 20 minutes. He had been put back into the SCV, I think in North Carolina division did that. But all of them that came by, we had the bass player that came. I think we had everybody but the drummer that came and talked to us. And then they had as many people that were there from the SCV. We went backstage. We presented them with division and national awards. We got to hang out with them before the concert started and all the way through the concert. They recognized us as being there and made mention of the fact that they were kicked out of a state fair. I believe it was in Illinois, I believe.
Illinois.
And before they could get off the parking lot, their tour manager had already received 3 phone calls with different festivals wanting to book them.
Yeah.
One of them was in New York. They didn't care about the music and the name of the band, or they cared about the music, not the name of the band. I thought it was a great deal for them to stand up and say there's nothing wrong with our logo? I mean, it's got twin.
Danny went stronger than that. He was on the stage at that festival in front of about 4,000 people, and I remember pretty close to what he said, because Mike McMurray and I were standing right behind the keyboard player at the foot of the stage. You know, we were back. All the SCV, they told SCV guys, y'all just stay backstage, hang out with us for the concert, and we did. And but they got about halfway through the show, and he said, some of y'all have heard about this little dust up that we had getting kicked out of the Illinois State Fair. And he said, look, we've been Confederate Railroad for 38 years. My father taught me that the only way to treat a bully is to stand up to him. We're not backing down. We will never change our name, and we will never change our logo. We will be Confederate Railroad until this band goes away. And I mean, it was a very, very strong statement. I was already a fan of Confederate Railroad. I loved their music back in the 90s. I told Danny, I said, I played a lot of your music in juke joints up and down the Warrior River in Alabama back in the mid 90s with my band. And I already loved their music, but I gained that much more respect for them that night.
I see a question from Chief of Heritage Defense, Ron Kennedy. Yes, we can possibly get them to be there. It will cost some money. They still have expenses and stuff. I've been told once before that a concert for them runs around $25,000 to put it on. They may give us a break. Actually, they played at Elm Springs twice, early 1990s. They were one of the two acts that was put on by this up-and-coming promoter / musician named Waylon Jennings. He's the one that actually put those concerts together at Elm Springs, and had Pirates of the Mississippi and Confederate Railroad were there one time.
You probably mean Shooter Jennings.
No.
In the 90s?
In the 90s, Waylon Jennings.
Waylon Jennings was
alive in 1990.
Yeah, but he wasn't an up-and-comer in the 1990s.
That was a joke.
Oh, okay.
Maybe I should have laughed when I said it. But
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, he was an up-and-coming promoter. He was more of a performer.
I got you. Yeah.
But I don't remember. I'd have to go back in my history book and look. But there was two acts along with Confederate Railroad, and after that, it went away. But all we had to do is reach out to them, and if they could do something there, all we'd have to do is set it up. The biggest problem is where you're going to park all the people.
Right.
That's the biggest thing. I don't know who sets up the stage. I'm not sure if they do their own. At Hope's Bluff, where we were at, they already had a stage set up because it was a city park that has concerts there on a regular basis. So there would have to be some things worked out, but there's nothing that says that we can't ask. All we can do is get turned down.
Yeah, that's right. Did we have any other pictures left, Jimmy?
We have Straits Raid reenactment. That's October 14th and 15th. So that one's coming up. This is actually on the battlefield site of where Colonel Abel Strait surrendered to Nathan Bedford Forrest. It's at Cedar Bluff, Alabama. It's sort of directly behind and to the left of the monument for that the surrender site. And then we've got another one for October 21st through the 22nd is the 37th annual fall muster. I'm not going to give that one to Carl or myself. We got somebody from Mississippi that can talk about that if he would.
Well, I guess it does fall under some of my duties I have. So the Fall Muster event held at Beauvoir is the biggest fundraiser for Beauvoir. If you don't know what Beauvoir is, it is the last home of President Jefferson Davis. It is owned and operated by the Beauvoir Corporation, whose members are the Mississippi Division Sons of Confederate Veterans. This is going to be like stepping back in time into the 1860s if you come to this event. There will be 2 reenactments, one Saturday, one Sunday. And of course, a whole lot of vendors, living historians, camp life, first-person presentations, music presented by Unreconstructed, fall small muster and other kid activities. We will have the Hunley exhibit this year, a period dance, many settlers and vendors, food, snacks, and a ladies' tea. And again, this is the biggest fundraiser for Beauvoir. So if you can be there, I highly encourage you to please come help us out.
All right, sir. The last event that I have coming up for the Army of Tennessee that's been announced to me is October the 21st. The Indiana Division will hold their yearly reunion in Bluffton, Indiana. It's a small division, but they have a good turnout for their reunion. We've got about 150 members, and they'll have 40 at least there for the reunion. And there's 6 camps spread all over Indiana, as far away as Evansville, Indianapolis, and there's a camp there in Bluffton. It's put on at an American Legion hall that provides them the place to meet for free. They also do the catering for lunch, and it is really, really good. This will be, I guess, my 4th one that I've been to, or no, it'll be my 5th one. Since I went once as a councilman, and I've been there 3 years as an Army commander. I'm fixing to make my 4th one. The only one that I didn't actually attend, I was about 20 miles away in a hospital in a cardiac care unit. I woke up that morning and thought I was having a heart attack, and I drove by the American Legion Hall on the way to the cardiac unit. But the only good thing I got out of it was I got to see Alabama play Georgia that night, and not at a time when we won. But it is a very good reunion. Hope that people will come out for it that's in that area. The last thing I've got is just general comments. Anything that, Carl, you got that comes to mind that we need to talk about?
No, not offhand. I mean, I'm maybe partisan, but I think the AoT is the best Army in the SCV. I'll throw that out there.
Well, I have to add a statement because I didn't realize this. I've heard JC say this a couple of times, that the ATM is the largest by land area.
Yeah.
Well, I can dispute that. Brazil is part of the Army of Tennessee. And it is almost as big as the United States.
Yeah.
So, how can you be bigger than the AoT?
Well, there you go.
So I got to remember to tell JC that the next time I see him.
Well, one addendum I guess I could add to my challenge on the fundraising is that we want this to spread into the other armies. This is not just an AoT thing. I mean, that's not up to me or Jimmy. It's up to the Army commanders and Army councilmen of those 2 armies as to whether they push this or not. But I cannot overstate the importance of this museum. I cannot overstate, the importance not just of us getting the banknote paid off and having the museum, but how important I think that the information and the timeline and the narrative that is projected there, how important that is to the furtherance of telling the truth of Southern history. If you look at to me, the most important words in the charge of Stephen Dill Lee is vindicate the cause. Vindicate the cause. Vindicate means to bring justification to. It means to justify, to tell the truth, to correct the record of what our ancestors fought for. That's what vindicate means. And outside of the museum, what you have is a bunch of people and a bunch of pamphlets, a bunch of brochures, and a bunch of books going here, there, and everywhere. The museum centralizes all of that and gives us a launching pad for the truth, for facts, for vindicating our cause, the cause of our ancestors. So that's it. I'm not going to belabor the point any more than that, but I feel like the importance of getting this paid off and getting it 100% under our control, getting the banknote, diminished, done away with, is, it's extremely important, and it's very much to our benefit as an organization and as a people.
One of the things, I'll expand a little bit on the timeline and what Carl was just talking about, the charge. Part of the museum came about because certain things on the timeline that past Commander Chuck McMichael had sent me, the timeline. Well, I looked at all of that information and was trying to figure out how can we best put that up there to where people can see it and not overburden them with so much information. I mean, people say there's a lot there to read, and there is, I agree. But like for Gettysburg is in a section that's 2 foot wide and 42 inches long. It's a synopsis of the 3 days, hitting the high points. Now, if you go to the QR code and scan it, you will get a great article by Michael C. Hardy on the Battle of Gettysburg. It's about 12 pages long, and it's a very good read. But the opening, when you walk into the museum doors, the reason why what's on the screen there is what it's there for. It focuses on the SCV and the charge. And so anybody that's there, this is the first thing that they're going to see. It's the first thing you see them read the charge. There's now a QR code that talks about Stephen D. Lee and the charge. But also to the left, you're standing there looking into the eyes of a 14-year-old unknown Confederate soldier who was killed during the war. The look on his face and the emptiness look in his eyes will make you really understand what this war was about. It wasn't the grizzled old veterans that you see in pictures like from Gettysburg. You see the ones leaning against the fence. You see that's a popular photo. But when you see these guys that are that young, I've been there when people have made a comment, he's not really a soldier, is he? That's just a little guy in uniform. I said, no, that's an actual soldier. We just don't know who he is, but we know he was killed in a particular battle. And they cannot believe that there were soldiers that young. And that just opens the door to them to be able to go through the museum. We had a man that questioned some of the writing on the timeline. He asked Commander-in-Chief Bo Shears, I've never heard this before. How did y'all come up with this? And he walked over there and showed him right down at the very bottom. Everything has to have a source listed, and that said Library of Congress. So he looked it up and then realized this wasn't something that we made up. This was not fiction. This was the actual true story, not the made up version that you see in our education institutions today. So this museum is definitely going to be something that will help us into the future.
Yeah, and we Jimmy and I talked years ago. I mean, we're talking years ago before the museum was, before we ever began construction or voted to begin construction. And he and I both agreed we have got to stop running from the issue of slavery. We got to stop running from it. We need to confront it and how it ties in with the war. There's actually a section there that explains that from our perspective, because all you get on that issue is the Yankee perspective. And notice I didn't say Northern, I said the Yankee perspective. There's a difference. Okay, so that's there. Ron and Donnie wrote a section on Reconstruction. You know, that's extremely important in the history of the South. One of the greatest calamities of American history is the bald-faced lie that the South initiated or inaugurated war either through secession or through firing the first shot. Well, they fired the first shot at Yankee vessels loaded with armed invaders in our waters. So there's actually a story there on Fort Sumter, and it tells the truth about why we fired the first shot. Yeah, we fired the first shot because they committed the first act of aggression, and you'll get that there. This museum, look, I understand all of our members may not be in a position to ever visit this museum. There may be members of ours who will never be able to go there. Okay, I get that. But we didn't build the museum to preach to the choir. The museum, the point of it is to bring our message and the truth of Southern history to everybody else, to the rest of the country. Because we are inundated with Yankee mythology from academia and the public education system, entertainment, all these other places. Now we have a place that shows our message, and I liken it to, you know, the fact that, you know, and I don't mean to be in any way at all sacrilegious about this, so don't take it that way, but the gospel of Christ was spread around the world 2,000 years ago by 12 apostles. How many evangelists can we create out of the people that come through our museum?
Well, one more quick thing on the museum. Carl had brought up the artifacts. You know, we're not there to create an artifact show, but the artifacts are vitally important. So we do need artifacts in there. They help tell the story. We will have displays that will have the different types of infield and other ornaments that are out there. We will have those on display, but we have a section on Harriet Beecher Stowe, who wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin. One of the things that grabs their attention is that we actually have an 1852 first edition of Uncle Tom's Cabin and a little display cabinet below her article. That gets looked at a lot. And, you know, that was donated by Curtis Harris from the Florida division. And he actually asked me which edition did I want. And so I said, well, if I had my choice, I'd like to have an 1852 first edition. But they run like $5,000 on eBay. And he said, well, I think I've got a couple of those. And I just thought he was sort of pulling my leg. And he said, I've got them all the way up into the 1930s. So he said, I'll get back with you. Well, at the reunion in Cartersville, his camp commander was there. And many of you may remember that they donated an 1852 first edition Uncle Tom's Cabin. That helps to tell that story. It's easy to read, but when you see actual artifacts that belong to that time period, it's the same thing as the pants that Forrest Dawes brought. Actual trousers that were worn during the war. We're going to have a section on home life once we get the cabinetry in that will have letters that were written between soldiers back to their families and from the families back to their homes, where they will be able to stand in front of those and actually read the words of that soldier and what he was feeling at the time that he wrote it. That's when artifacts help bring the story to life. And then it becomes real to the people who are there. That's what that museum will be for, and it will help tell our story. And looking at the time, Moose, I've gone over our limit. But But if Carl, if you don't have anything else, I guess it's time for us to head on out.
I actually do have one more thing.
Okay.
And that is that this is a timely ending because before this came on, I made a big batch of homemade Southern pimento cheese, and I am really hungry.
All right. Well, Moose, we'll turn it back over to you on that note.
All right. Who don't really know how to respond to that one. All right. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you share this episode out. Share it out as best as you can to your SCV groups, on your public page. If you have a page just dedicated to the war between the states and telling our true history, please share it there as well. Make sure to tune in Monday, 7 p.m. Confederate Standard Time for your weekly episode of SCV Chat. And we'll see y'all then. Until next time, my friends, remember to stay Southern. Night, everybody.